Once upon a school day dreary, while I graded bored and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten grades. While I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my classroom door.
"'Tis some janitor tapping at my classroom door,"
I muttered.
"Only this and nothing more."
Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer,
"Sir,"
said I,
or "Madam, truly, your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is, I was grading, and so gently you came raiding, and so faintly you came tapping at my classroom door, that scarce I heard you."
Here I opened wide the door, emptiness there, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon again I heard a tapping somewhat louder than before.
"Surely,"
said I,
"surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore." "'Tis the wind and nothing more."
Then I sat there in my chair, when with a sound that raised my hair,
Whoa!
in there stepped a stately joker of the comic days before. Not the least of jokes he made me, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with grin of goofy fancy perched above my printer's door, perched upon a desk-jet printer just above my printer's door. Quoth the joker, "Nevermore." That's when, for the sake of time, I vowed I'd cut this poem down somehow, because my goodness, Edgar Allan sure could bore someone to the floor. Quote the pizza, "Nevermore." I spun around and saw the pictures, swirling, whirling classroom fixtures, here to taunt me yet some more. Quote the turtle, "Nevermore."
"This is getting out of hand."
My sullen eyes did land upon the frog, whose eyes I'd swore blinked the froggo, "Nevermore." At this hour my heart did flutter, loudly beating, pitter-putter, quote the jelly, "Nevermore."
"This is nuts,"
said Plato crazy. Now his writing's just getting lazy. And so he flew out running wildly, right out of his classroom door. Quote the kitty, "Nevermore." Wasn't that nice? That was a parody of The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. And The Telltale Heart is also by Edgar Allan Poe, because this guy wrote a lot of stuff and is kind of crazy about what he wrote, but, it's good. So we're looking at The Telltale Heart here, right? We're looking at pulling textual evidence out, right? So we're going to have to make some inferences here, which are some logical guesses about what's not directly or explicitly stated by the author, Edgar Allan. So we can make inferences about the characters, setting, and plot in a story. If we're going to make an inference, we have to read closely and critically, and we have to consider why an author gives particular details and information here. Why do they even include that, right? And then I also want you to think about what you already know. Use your own knowledge, experiences, and observations to figure out what the author doesn't directly say, right? It's kind of up to us. And we need to make sure that we're citing things from here, specific words, phrases, sentences, paragraphs from a text to support our inferences. Now, this is where the textual evidence comes in, right? So, The Telltale Heart is a story about this old guy getting murdered and the things that follow, right? From the first-person point of view of the murderer himself, which is kind of unique. Based on this situation, right, we might expect to find the narrator's account a denial of his guilt, or maybe an argument in his self-defense, right? We may be expecting him to be like, "I'm innocent," right? But instead, this narrator makes no attempt to deny the fact that he's guilty. He doesn't even express remorse for what he did, right? And given that he's not apologizing, right, we're here to question if he's reliable or not. He tries to prove to us that he is reliable. He tries to prove that he's not crazy, that he's, sane. But he's not trying to prove that he's innocent here. So is the narrator actually crazy, or is he not, right? And we have to kind of look through here and find out if this is a crazy person or not based on evidence from the text, right? So The opening paragraph can really set the tone here in the story. It can kind of give us some evidence that could lead to us questioning the narrator's claim that he may be nervous, but he's not insane, right? And that he's quite logical, right? He says, above all, and this is the sense of hearing acute, I heard all things in the heaven and earth. I heard many things in hell, right? So he says, you know what? My hearing's fine, right? I don't need to worry about that. I'm not crazy. But the fact that he's hearing stuff from heaven and hell is kind of weird, isn't it, right? So we might conclude after reading this that the narrator is talking to someone after the murder actually took place. We don't know if he's talking to a psychologist, newspaper reporter, maybe a police officer, investigator, or maybe a lawyer hired to defend him, right? We have no idea who he's talking to. Maybe he's talking to himself, right? But as we're reading through this, right, we have to hear him out and we have to judge if he's sane or not. And what he says improves some evidence there of his true mental state, right? The narrator acknowledges that he's nervous, right? But he implies that this is a result of extreme sensitivity with his hearing. He maintains that his nervousness should not be thought of as a sign of madness, but that instead, that he's actually saying because he hears everything, right? And what textual evidence can we find that shows that? Well, this kind of intensifies later in the text when the narrator describes his actions during the first 7 nights of the story. He says, you fancy me mad, but madmen know nothing. You should have seen me, right? With what caution, with what foresight I went to work. I was, never kinder to the old man during the whole week before I killed him, right? So he's saying here that, I was kind to him, right? Would that be what a crazy person would do? Would be nice to the guy before I killed him, right? I wanted to make things nice for him, right? And then, that he worked so hard in doing this. He put a dark lantern all close so that no light shone out. He was so cunning the way he thrust his head in, right? That took him a whole hour to put his head within the opening. An entire hour to put your whole head into a door is really methodical and slow. So, he asked, would a madman have been so wise as this, right? Would a crazy person do this? Probably. But, in this point, he's basically saying that, I'm not crazy. So is he reliable? Is he not? I have no idea, right? But that's kind of up to us to find out looking at the textual evidence. So, these are the important things to know, that every detail in text can be a clue to the meaning, intent, or context of what the person's saying. Explicit evidence is stated directly, right? But inferences can support things as powerful, though, as an explicitly stated piece of evidence. So inferences can be good here. But just remember, though, that not all textual evidence has weight or is useful, right? We have to use logical guesses and what's implied, right? What's kind of hidden under the surface to infer knowledge about what's going on in a text. We can do this through word choice, details, characters, that sort of thing. What inferences give readers clue about are things like author's intent, right? What they mean. And we infer textual evidence by looking at how it supports the understanding of a text, right? But inferred evidence brings out the context of it. So in other words, we can look at something directly, which is explicit, as I said before, or we can look at something that's kind of inferred, which brings out, what the author probably is saying, secret. And we have to look at most texts to interpret textual evidence to understand its intent or meaning of the author. We have to look at all the evidence to determine whether it's true or valid or not. Poe builds a lot of tension and suspense in this because he requires us as readers to make inferences about if the narrator actually reliable or not. Is he crazy? Is he not crazy? Right? And the central claim is that, he may be nervous, but he's not mad, right? He's not insane. He's just a little nervous, just a little wacky, right? But he's not crazy. Debatable. And this is kind of what we would call a dramatic monologue. It's an extended piece of dialogue, like in a play or a movie. He's talking to himself. And the whole time he's trying to convince us that he is not crazy because he's describing how carefully he planned out this murder. Crazy? Not crazy? I don't know. It's up to you. So that's how we use textual evidence to figure this out. Feel free to dive into the text and look and see, is this guy soup to nuts?